Hey guys, I wanted to talk to you guys about spiritual anorexia. This is sort of an epidemic that has taken over most of the church, and it's really sad. So, most of us know what anorexia is. It's people who typically have like a low body weight because they are refusing to eat like an adequate amount of food. So spiritual anorexia is, although our bodies may be full, our spirit may be starving because we're not nourishing our spirit. So I'll just share a few verses with you guys. In the King James Bible, the word meat usually means like solid food. And we see this concept of spiritual meat versus spiritual milk. And I'll just share two verses with you guys. First one's 1 Corinthians 3:2. And this, Paul is saying, I have fed you with milk and not with meat, for ye were not able to bear it. So we're seeing that some people aren't able to bear spiritual meat. And Hebrews 5:13 says, for everyone that uses milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a babe. But strong meat belongeth to them that are of full age. So, just like in the physical sense, babies need milk before they eat solid food. If you tried to give a baby solid food, it would choke on it. And it's the same thing in the spiritual application. Those who are new believers or those who just aren't mature in their walk with the Lord need milk before they can consume meat. And what that means is milk is sort of the basics of Christianity, the foundation. And really, you need the milk before you can understand the deeper things of God, the meat. So, yeah, but once you are matured, you need to wean off the milk. It's the same thing in the physical sense. You wean the baby off of the milk and start incorporating solid foods into their diet. So that's what we ought to do. So John chapter 6 has a few verses that are pretty good. Jesus here says, labor not for meat which perishes, but for meat which endures unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. So we should be laboring for spiritual meat. And in this chapter, he says that he is the bread of life. And if any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. So Jesus is the spiritual bread of life. Verses 56 and 57, he says, he that eateth my flesh and drinketh my blood dwelleth in me. He that eateth me shall live by me. So obviously we're not sitting at a table and eating Jesus's body. It's a spiritual application. And we see in John 1:1 that Jesus is the Word of God. So the way we consume Jesus is by consuming the Word of God. And this isn't a new concept in the New Testament. This is throughout the Old Testament as well. In Jeremiah 15:16, Jeremiah says that he ate the words of God. And then Ezekiel 2 and 3 is it's a pretty good picture. Although this is not so much literal, this isn't so much spiritual as it is literal. God told Ezekiel to eat the scroll of a book. So Ezekiel literally ate the scroll, and he said it was sweet like honey. So that's sort of it's a good literal picture of spiritual reality. So the way we consume His Word is not just by reading it, but really understanding it and digesting it and meditating on it. Even memorizing it is a good way to really consume His Word. And when we do that, we thrive, and we're naturally going to bear fruit. You know, just like a plant, if it's getting all of its nutrients, is naturally going to bear fruit or bear vegetables. If we're getting our spiritual nutrients, are naturally going to bear fruit. We don't have to try to bear fruit. It's something that's a result of being spiritually nourished. And what happens if we don't nourish the spirit is we're spiritually anorexic. And some of the symptoms, if you will, of spiritual anorexia is weariness and fear. It's the works of the flesh, feeling condemned and feeling hopeless. So those aren't good things. You know, we really don't want to be malnourished. So the first thing we got to do is recognize when we are weary or when we are feeling hopeless, is understand that that's a result of spiritual malnourishment. So we need to accept the diagnosis, accept that we are spiritually anorexic. And then we need to go to the healer, which is Jesus. And we need to ask Him for help, because we can't do anything without Him. We can't do anything. We can't heal ourselves. So we need to ask Him to give us the desire for His Word and to make us hungry for it. Ask Him for help in understanding the Word. And that's really important too. You know, before you even open up the Word of God, seek Him and ask for help. And then if you're willing to receive His help, He will help you. So one of the things I struggle with from time to time when I'm malnourished is weariness. And I think this is something that a lot of us struggle with, especially if we're watching for the Lord's return. We're seeing a lot of like end time signs sort of align, and it can be a lot. So it can cause some weariness. And I recommend for you to go to God's promises. A couple promises that have really gotten me through is all things work together for the good for those who love God. I mean, that's a pretty mind-blowing promise, you know, that somehow God is working all things together for my good. I mean, we are so unworthy of the promises that God makes to His people. That's why we should stand firm on His promises. So another promise is, that God will wipe away every tear. That's a pretty nice promise, you know. So if you're feeling weary, I recommend just, getting into the Word. If you're feeling hopeless or fearful, whatever it is, if you're giving into the temptations of the flesh, you're likely malnourished. So you really need to ask the Lord to help you feed yourself, because we don't just live, I forget the verse, but we don't just live on bread alone, but every word that comes from God. That's paraphrased, but most of us know that verse, and it's true. This is our food. So anyway, hopefully this encourages you guys to feed your spirit. If you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, that's it. Until next time, God bless. Bye-bye.